Ahoy hoy.
Merry Christmas Eve! We just watched Holiday Spin. And we'll tell you all about it, but first we have to set the scene because the characters tonight, we have to describe their looks to you so it's easier to view. So the main character is a 17-year-old, basically a young Zac Efron.
Mm-hmm.
This is from 2020, so it's not actually him, but picture him from his cool days.
That would be Blake. He is the son of two dancers. Mm-hmm. One of them is Ralph Macchio.
Ralph Macchio from Karate Kid. Not to be confused with Chachi, who I thought that's what it was, but it's not.
So the movie, so that's the main characters. So the movie starts out, they're in North Carolina, and
which I thought was interesting because they don't normally ever have North Carolina movies.
Yeah, and Blake is hanging out with his mom, and they're doing their pre-Christmas stuff, and he's like, really, you're setting up Christmas? It's not even Thanksgiving yet, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, well, I need you to make something for Thanksgiving. And he's like, well, can I borrow the car? And they go, and he starts singing.
No, not yet.
That was what happened.
No, before that. He's apparently going to be in UFC, like he's that good or something.
He's an amateur fighter, and they had scouts that were going to come to his next fight. But basically, like, they're getting ready to go somewhere, and he starts doing a goofy song and dance thing in the car, and the mom is like laughing and just casually pulls out into the road
and joins in facing him,
and then they get T-boned
and she dies.
Yep.
And he's in a coma for 5 days.
Yeah, so he wakes up and there
is Ralph Macchio.
There's Ralph Macchio.
And he's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm your dad, son. You're moving to Miami with me.
Yeah, come on, we gotta go.
Side note, they didn't sell her studio. She owned her own studio. They didn't do anything with the house.
Yeah, there was not
They left
much
all of
going
his
on
stuff, and he never went back to school. But okay.
Yeah, and the kid is 17.
17.
He turns 18 like days before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So they relocate to Miami. He's pissed because this guy's been Ralph Macchio's been an absentee father.
Right. He never met him before or something.
But yeah, they're...
So it turns out the dad, of course, also owns a dance studio.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they have a little Wednesday Addams, Jenna Ortega, who is living with them and learning how to dance.
She is from Chicago and is studying with them and living with them as an underage, I guess,
student?
would.
Yeah, I don't know. Very odd. But anyways, so the kid's kind of bitter because obviously his entire life has been uprooted. He has an entirely new life. His mother has passed, and his douchebag dad he now lives with.
Yeah. So they do the whole thing, and it's super weird. Like Blake says more in like an interaction with his MMA training partner than he says for like the first 20-30 minutes of the movie interactions with Ralph Macchio.
Which is odd, and you did say that, but you have to think if he's grieving, he's not going to want to talk to random people. Like, he's probably like in his head a lot.
Well, yeah, but he's like, every conversation they have is one sentence and like one word answers.
This is true.
And so he says something when they're dancing, when Pia, the girl that's training with them, is dancing, and she's dancing with this guy who's the best, and he wins, and he's always the winner and whatever, and they're trying to pair them up together to win the contest. And so he's moving way too fast, and she is not able to keep up with them, and they're very awkward and whatnot. And he says, like, oh, you're going too fast, or whatever.
Which is kind of interesting because... So he's going too fast and she can't keep up or whatever. Apparently those two are also dating, and this guy is like a scrawny little bro. Like he's got like, diamond studs in his ears. He looks kind of like a dorkier version / trying to be hard ass of the guy from Scream. Liver alone.
No, he has to me he's very Benedict Cumberbatch. He's the little scrawny like butthead looking dude, and he's just over there trying to bro it out and like be a hard ass and everything. So like they he says like, "Oh, you're moving too fast," and the dad yells at him for butting in, and he goes upstairs. And so then later on that night, Pia and the guy are
hanging out
in his bedroom.
He's trying to like basically like R-word her, and she's like not.
Yeah.
She's like, "Stop, like, dude, I'm not." And he's like, "Don't you feel bad that you're not hooking up with me?" And she was like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah. And so they leave, and he's all frustrated and everything. And then they meet with Tessa, the other girl dancer, who's like, she comes tearing up the road, tires squealing. She pulls into a parking spot, jams on the brakes.
These like children all have like Fast and the Furious cars.
And yeah, it's just a whole weird interaction where she comes out and she's like, "Oh, you're with this guy," and like it just so awful.
So awful.
Her character is the worst, and then like the next day, what?
So they go to a store later and they see her, and I was kind of surprised that they had this on TV. But like her friend goes to Tessa, whore, and the girl goes to her like slut or something like that. And I was like, how is this like okay? And then later on she even said like suck ass. I'm like, what? Like, how is this on TV?
Yeah, I love the part where they were talking about like, oh, I heard, or she. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay,
but so they introduce her, and she's like total child and whatever. So they're like, there's like some sparks of chemistry between the two, Pia and
Zac Efron's
Blake, but they're kind of playing it low, and Ralph Macchio's like trying to actively like deter them from interacting with each other because she has such a promising career, and he's only going to be here for another month before he turns 18 and leaves.
Goes back. And also, you don't want to make the mistake that I did of getting your mom knocked up at your age.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, but then
so Ralph Macchio has a failing studio because he was always second place, and for whatever reason, I don't know, his studio is failing. So
they need to win in order to get the prize,
$50,000 prize or whatever.
Yeah,
which it shouldn't go to this. Well,
yeah, they give the people a prize as well, but
yeah.
So the next major point that happens is Pia goes to the douchebag's house and sees that Tessa's car is there.
Oh, that's right.
And she walks in and walks in on them fucking, and
Fine.
Oh, I'm gonna have to edit that.
Yeah.
But yeah, walks in on them, and and so she breaks up, like she goes and leaves, and he follows her. And so they start a big argument at the dance studio, and Blake comes down and interrupts it and like saves her, and like it's all so weird because they live above the dance, like they live in the dance studio. Like the dance studio is like the first floor of their building. There's no like enclosure. It's just the first floor a staircase that goes up into a bunch of rooms, and that's where their bedrooms and like the storage room that he's currently living in is. So
Yeah.
he's like, they're arguing in the entryway of the studio, and he just comes downstairs and is like, dude, you need to leave.
Yeah, he's like barefoot, like has like cut off shirts, although that's a popular trend for this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the first little no, that wasn't
Yeah,
the
that
first
was
little bro. That was
the main conflict there. So he leaves the next day. He's like, "I'll see." The bros like, "I'll see you later." And the next day, he's like driving down the street with this dude in a drop top Mustang, like this is Vanilla Ice in the
it was
'90s over
weird.
here,
Yeah,
and
so they jump out because the dude's on his just walking down the street.
yeah.
And they're like, "Yo, man, what you trying to do? Like you trying to whatever?"
Yeah, they start trying to fight outside of this store called Serendipity, a tea store.
Yeah. This
And
random dude comes up behind him. He's like, "Yo, let's make this a fair fight." And then the other
yeah,
two backed off. And he was wearing the Zac Efron was wearing like a kickboxing shirt. And he's like, "Oh, do you fight?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, I own a fight
yeah, he's
studio."
like, I have a gym. Come over. Are you looking for a gym? So they go over and train for a little bit and, start that friendship.
But then he goes out to dinner with Pia, and I don't know where the parents were. But they come back and the cops are all swarmed around the studio because, all right, let's set the scene because this was so dumb. Okay, so they walk inside and in the
And
studio is a knocked over Christmas tree with like smashed bulbs everywhere, broken like mirror glass.
yeah, they broke the chandeliers that overlook the dance floor.
And the weirdest thing ever, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle level weird stuff.
Yes, there are these. There's this yellow
Sludge.
sludge that's all over the walls and all over the floor.
In
And there's
buckets with like a skull
yeah,
and crossbone.
yeah.
And we're like, what?
And they walk in and legit just walk right past multiple police officers that are just standing there, not even like, hold up, guys, this is a crime scene, you can't go in there. He just cops there with the notepad, just writing stuff down. They walk right past them, and nobody says
It
anything.
was so weird. And then they're I was like, what is that? And they're like to the parents, like, can this be fixed? And meanwhile, just sweep it up. And the dad's like, no, this place is ruined. And we're like, what is this? Like, what's
Yeah.
happening? Just sweep it up.
And so they obviously blame the chud and his, and they're like, oh, well, he had an alibi. And
The alibi was the girl he hooked up with.
yeah, and they have not told Ralph Macchio about that relationship because she doesn't want to bring it out. They just stopped being partners together and all of that. So they're building up this rivalry between them, and it's so weird.
So the toxic sludge they leave, and you made a good point. So they live above it, and they literally just go up to bed, and there's like toxic.
Like, oh,
We don't know what it was.
yeah, I don't understand how that happens in the first place because they live there. So as long as one of the people are there, they would know what's going on because they would hear someone breaking in and making all the commotion downstairs.
Yeah. Super weird.
Yeah, so they start going on dates, and they
have to go to a holiday party.
Yeah, they go to a holiday party, and this is where the movie just turns into Grease.
They
walk in.
It was pretty good up until this point.
Yeah. So they walk into this party, and and for whatever reason there's a dance floor and people are dancing around, and then the enemies show up at the party, and they just come in and start dancing, and the dude is just standing there, and up to this point he's been known as a fighter and hasn't danced at all, says he doesn't know how to dance, does all that, and then he's just like, let's dance.
And they have a choreographed thing that they just put on in front of everyone. And then the sickest part, all of a sudden he goes like, come on, gays.
No, come on, guys. He says, come on, guys. And then there's three other guys that join in.
They just jump in out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And they all do a full choreographed thing.
It was like the Sharks versus the Jets. And it was so odd. I was like, come on. What is...
Come on, gays.
What is... Because... And it was just ridiculous. And then there was a dance-off. And...
Yeah. So, yeah, that happened. They do a couple of dating things where she takes him out for burgers and they're doing all this stuff. And he
does go to kiss her at one point, and she was like, no, you're just doing this to spite your dad. And he's like, what? Like, no, I'm not.
He's like, and then she was like, well, you're about to leave. And he's like, well, give me a reason, like, give me a reason to stay. And so they have their conflict and break up. And
because he says to the dad, like, you're not my dad. Like, you were never there for me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So they kind of break up. And then they like, I don't know how this happened, but they were going to, they were leaving a practice session where they were completely out of sync and just not working well together. And they run into the douche guy at at a restaurant or something. He walks out and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, man, I just heard about your mother and sorry. And
they like shake hands.
Yeah, they shake hands. And then he pulls them in real close and goes, mama's boy.
So then the MMA comes out.
Yeah, they set the stage for this earlier when he was talking to her at one of the dates. And he was like, yeah, I never showed that I could dance, or I stopped dancing because I got tired of being made fun of. And everybody called me mama's boy and all that kind of stuff. And so I started to, I just went into, martial arts to be able to defend myself. And so he says that, and the dude just flips his switch and just starts beating the guy down.
But of course, the other dancer fights.
Yeah, the other dancer apparently is also a trained MMA fighter.
I know.
Like, he punches him. He starts it out. He punches him in the face, knocks the guy, or flips him down, and the guy kicks
pops
up,
back up on his legs like that. Yeah,
and they just have this big fight where they're both going at it, and he gets the best of it. It's 45 seconds, and the cops pull up, and he is getting arrested.
Yeah.
She convinces him not to press charges by giving him a kiss.
The doucher.
And she basically says, oh, what are you, afraid of him and us? We won't be able to see who the best dancer is if you get him arrested.
Right. And he's, dances down there apparently. So he's about to leave, but then it's his birthday. And so this was weird. So the fiance of Ralph Macchio gives the kid a present. She's like, oh, this is from me. He's like, you didn't have to. She's like, no, I really did. And so we're all like, okay, this is okay. It's a freaking pair of tidy whities with red stripes.
Yeah, it's Christmas cane style tidy whities.
And everyone just kind of stopped and stared at each other for a second.
And then the girl gives him new gloves.
Boxing gloves.
Yeah, new MMA gloves.
And then the dad gives him a CD. Oh, by the way, so this movie was from 2020. He has a slider phone. We're like, what is this?
Yeah, that's fun. So yeah, Ralph gives the kid a tape. They get into a fight again. He's like, whatever, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And he's like, just watch the video. So he goes to the restaurant, watches the video, and sees that it's his dad watching him at some kind of dance competition. And he's like, oh, okay, well, my dad clearly likes me and just kind of hid in the shadows or whatever. So he comes back, and then they prepare for the dance off, the holiday spin. And so they basically do their dances, and
lo and behold, it's a tie! First time ever!
oh no.
Dusher and Slotty and Zac Efron and Wednesday Addams. It's a tie!
They're tied. Yeah, they're tied up.
So now they literally have a dance-off where they have to, out of nowhere, like in 3 seconds, come up with a new outfit, new hairstyle and makeup, and a new dance.
Yeah, somehow they they did all of that, and they do their dances, and the guy, the douche lord, does some kind of fast, high speed, up, crazy dance.
But ends it with him laying on the slut girl on the ground, making out with her.
Yeah.
So weird.
And so the guy is just like, we're gonna do a waltz.
We're doing the waltz, and Ralph Macchio's like, oh my gosh, like no, that's so hard. And
no, he was the one that was okay with it. Everybody else.
Oh, sorry, the mom, the mom fiance was like,
the
no,
fiance
that's
was
so
like,
hard.
no, we don't have any room for error. And Ralph comes in and says he can do it. And so they do it.
And it was kind of good. Like I enjoyed that dance. Like it was to like Christmas carols or something. I don't know.
All of the songs that they were dancing to at the holiday spin were like variations of Christmas carols.
Yeah, so it was dramatic,
so,
and
like,
it was kind of
waltzy,
enjoyable. The waltz part was.
Yeah.
And they win!
Yay! And then he decides to stay.
While they kiss first in front of the entire audience. That was their first kiss. And then he decides to stay. However, he never finishes school.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
He says that, oh, I have to go home and get the rest of my clothes. Again, where's the house? They never did anything with his house. They never sold the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Just weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yes.
Well, he did say that he had to tie up some loose ends.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be on the kid.
But yeah. Well, I mean, the kid is, like, if they're not married, then it's going to be on the kid because the kid is
I don't know. I feel like Ralph Macchio should have, like, stepped up a bit and not been such a selfish little...
Well, I don't think Ralph Macchio has any say in the matter.
No, but he can be there for the kid if the kid literally has no other, like, family members.
That's what he did. He took the kid to...
But regarding, like, the house and the mom's studio...
I don't... Okay. So what would you rate it?
Other than the, like, dancing street fights, which out of nowhere...
The dance-offs. Yeah, the Grease style.
The Grease style. And even the slut girl, when she was dancing, she had, like, the dress of, like, Zsa Zsa Giacorio, who, you know, was the, like, bad girl in Grease. And it was just, I don't know. It was Cha-Cha, not Zsa Zsa. But I did like the whole, like, moody Zac Efron vibes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 7.
It was a 6 for me. There were ups and there were downs. It was kind of generic, but interesting enough.
It was interesting enough. The weird-ass street fighting, though.
Yeah.
The dance-offs.
The dance-offs.
The dance-offs, that's what I mean.
And this dude, like...
Leave her alone.
Just being such a douche lord and, like, acting so hard like he's Tommy Tough Nuts over here.
He reminded me of, like, a singer from LFO.
Yeah, it was just so
New
weird.
Kids on the Block had a bunch of hits.
But yeah, there it is.
Holiday Spin.
See you next time.
Oh, yeah, and he did give, because the dad was always in second place, and they won, so he gave him, like, the pendant that said, like...
Junior Dance Champions.
And so the dad cried. Bye!
Bye!
Merry Christmas!